Oh my goodness, you are such an inspiration. Wow, you really are. You're so strong. Can I pet your service dog? Ugh. 1, 2, 3, let's go! We are artists, parents, teachers, good guys, bad guys, students, leaders. I'm not your inspiration, yeah, I'm fully who I am. Got my own expectations that don't fit into your plans. I'm not your sad story, so I wrote it in this song. Everything you know about disability is wrong. Yeah, everything you know. Yeah, everything you know about disability is wrong.
Hi, listeners. Today on the podcast, we have Cory Lee. So welcome to the podcast, Cory.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for coming on. Listeners, just a little bit about Cory. After being diagnosed with spinal muscular atrophy at the age of 2, Cory Lee's thirst for adventure never ceased. He has traveled across all 7 continents in his powered wheelchair while managing to run his travel blog, Curb Free with Cory Lee, which we will definitely get into in this episode. It's a great blog, listeners. Check it out. He shares accessible and sometimes not so accessible travel adventures with others.
And Cory has also published a children's book, Let's Explore with Kotor. I love that title. That's so cute. And he does annual trips where his followers can join him in international destinations. And in 2022, he launched the Curb Free Foundation. And this is a nonprofit that provides wheelchair users with travel grants to go on their dream trip. So as always, Cory's goal is to inspire other wheelchair users to roll out of their comfort zones and see the beauty that the world has to offer.
We are so excited to have you on the podcast. Before we dive into questions, let's go ahead and do our audio description. So I can take that away and start with that. This is Lily speaking. I am a white passing woman in my mid-20s. I have green eyes and brown hair, and I am wearing my usual gold hoop earrings and the necklace, and I will fidget with both during the episode. Erin, you want to do yours?
Yep. I'm Erin, and I'm wearing an orange shirt, and I have red hair and blue eyes, and I'm sitting in my very dark bedroom.
Yeah. I'm Cory, and I am a white male. I'm 34 years old, wearing a pink t-shirt, and I have black hair and black glasses as well. Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, welcome to Everything You Know About Disability is Wrong. I think this is going to be a great episode.
Totally.
Yeah,
So,
I'm really
Cory,
excited to be here with you guys, and I appreciate the offer to be here on the podcast.
yeah, thank you. We definitely love having you here. Our podcast is called Everything You Know About Disability is Wrong, and we like to ask all our guests, what do people get wrong about you and also your disability?
I feel like there's so much we could unpack here, but one thing that has been driving me like bonkers lately is that people will not even like talk to me when I'm like out in public. Like I was in Chicago this past week, and at a few restaurants that I went to, they kept looking at the person that was traveling with me and asking them like, "Oh, what does he want to eat?" or how can we best assist him with getting on the plane? Or like they always refer to them. And like I haven't really started noticing that until like the past like maybe year, and it feels like it's getting worse instead of better, which is like really upsetting. But it's like something that I've definitely been noticing a lot more lately, and it like every time it happens, it drives me wild.
Yeah, I strongly dislike that that's getting worse. Like that's awful to have to notice more. I feel like that's such a, I don't know, it feels like it should be such common sense. Like talk to the person you're talking to, but it's like not for some reason. And I know we've spoken to people who use like interpreters as well, and they've had a similar experience where people will speak only to the interpreter.
Yeah.
And it's like, what? Such ableism and bogusness. That's the worst.
Yeah, it's
and it's like even
very
if
relatable.
even if I couldn't speak, like still at least try. And then I'm sure like if I couldn't speak, my companion would like speak up for me, but at least like give the effort, So yeah, I mean, hopefully it'll get better eventually.
Yeah, I deal with that like all the time. And actually, I went to the doctor last week, or the week before. I went to the doctor, and this whole experience was horrific. But a nurse comes out and says to my mom in the waiting room, in front of everybody, "Oh, why is she here today?" And my mom was like, she's nauseous." And the nurse was like, "How do you know she's nauseous?" And my mom's like, "She told me?" Like, and then the nurse started to talk to me. It was just like, what?
Yeah,
It's ridiculous.
That's wild.
Have either of you ever like, the only word I can think of is like clap back, but that's not like the right term for this, but have you like had the moment of being like, hey, you can speak to me directly?
Yeah. So usually when they do that and like they ask my companion something, I just like immediately speak up and like as loudly as I can, and just like not cause a scene, but like just like be obnoxiously loud. So they like get the point, like, oh wow, like he can really speak, like maybe we should have asked him, But yeah, I definitely like try to talk a little louder, but I mean, I don't necessarily like do a clap back, I guess. Maybe I should. Like if you know of something good that I could say, like as a sarcastic response, I would love to hear it. But yeah.
I don't clap back either. I just answer them. And then they're like shocked that I said anything.
Right.
So it's like,
yeah, and then you have to deal with the second layer of ableism there, the like shock of the dismay of like, wow. Yeah, it's frustrating that like, you don't want to like make a scene, but it's like a scene should be made when you're not being treated as human. It's frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that, we in the autistic community, we talk about this a lot with people who use like alternative communication devices. Same thing, like people just won't look directly at them, even though they're communicating, but just in a different way. It's frustrating. Listeners, if you're for some reason unsure where to look at, a great rule of thumb is to look at the person you're speaking to. It's usually a good thing.
Yeah. For sure.
And then, so, more on what people have gotten wrong about you. We love Curb Free here at Easter Seals. I think it's a phenomenal blog, and it aligns with just like, we want at Easter Seals, we're really working for accessible travel. So it's amazing. You've created such like a resource for people who want to travel. Tell us a little bit about how you started Curb Free, and also, are people often like shocked by the fact that you travel so much? Just tell us about that.
Oh yeah, I mean, I definitely think people are shocked at the fact that I travel so much, because I think like people just assume, that wheelchair users like can't travel, and that was actually one of the reasons why I even started the blog in the first place. Is I was about to graduate from college with my bachelor's degree in marketing, and I started putting out like job applications, trying to find a job, and nobody was responding. And I was disclosing my disability in those job applications. So I don't know that that was a factor of why they weren't responding, but history shows that that definitely doesn't help in the job search. So maybe that was why. But eventually, I finally got a call from an advertising firm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and they told me that they would pay for me to fly to Pittsburgh. I live in Georgia, so Atlanta is my home airport. And they would pay for me to fly from Atlanta to Pittsburgh the next day if I could fly up there, and they would give me a job interview. And so I was like so excited, packed up my bags, flew to Pittsburgh the next day with a caregiver. And when I got to Pittsburgh, I immediately went to the hiring manager's office. And as soon as I rolled into his office, he come to like looked me up and down. And the first words out of his mouth where he said, well, this job involves traveling, so you're definitely not the best fit. And he turned me away like immediately before I even got to do the interview that I, flew to Pittsburgh for. I was immediately like turned away. And so in that moment, I was like really dismayed and like sad and didn't know what the future held or if I would ever be able to have a career of any kind, even though I had, spent these 4 years in college getting a degree in marketing. Like, what was that even for if people weren't going to give me a chance to get a job? And so around that same time, I was also researching for an upcoming trip to Australia. And I got online and started Googling like wheelchair accessible things to do in Sydney and wheelchair hotels in Sydney and like all the things that you need to research in advance of a trip as a wheelchair user. But I quickly found that there was so little accessible travel information on the internet. And that was back in late 2013. And so there just weren't a lot of resources out there. And I thought, between the hiring manager like telling me I can't travel and then realizing a lack of information on the internet, those two things kind of like merged in the same week. And that is what inspired me to start Curb Free with Cory Lee. And so it's been a little over 10 years now since I started the blog, and it's been like better than anything I could have ever expected, and definitely a whirlwind of an adventure, but in the best possible way.
Well, about that experience and that Pittsburgh hiring director, oh my goodness, like just straight up discrimination there.
Yeah.
And also such a wild thing for him to say because you had literally just flown there.
Right.
Like they had said like you're gonna have to fly out here immediately. Like they kind of put the test in place, like, are people willing to travel for this position that requires travel? And you passed the test.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they still said that. That's absolutely ridiculous. And I think of how much money that company wasted, one, flying someone out, not even giving them a chance, and how many phenomenal people that they could have hired that probably they just never gave a chance to. I think that money is the way that things tend to like change in this world. And I think that that's something employers need to understand is like your discrimination is costing you dollars.
Exactly.
Like think about, how successful Curb Free you started 10 years ago. It's such a successful blog. That company that didn't hire you as a marketer is like probably reading it and weeping. Like, oh man, we missed out on someone who's really great at writing and marketing. Like that.
I know.
That is so frustrating.
I wish I would have like started collecting postcards everywhere that I do travel and send it to that like hiring manager. Like, how epic would that be? But I'm not that petty, but I really think I should be at sometimes.
I really think you should be too. That would be awesome. Like 15 years later, still getting postcards, and they haven't left Pittsburgh once that whole time, and you're traveling the whole world.
Oh yeah.
I love the idea of sending them postcards for all your trips.
Maybe I'll do it eventually. I really should. It would be hilarious. They probably don't even remember me at this point, but I should have just done it from the beginning for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there's got to be someone listening out there that has unfortunately, this type of discrimination is not uncommon, even 10 years later. And so, maybe we can't necessarily fix the employment world immediately, but we can offer something very petty for you to do. So I think that's an amazing thing to send.
Please do it.
Please do. And then reach out to us and let us know, because I would love it if we could, that's like what we became known for, is inspiring people to do really petty things in the face of ableism. That is, that's what everything you know about disability is wrong. You don't know that we're clever and we're petty.
Exactly.
We've dealt with a lot of bullshit. When you deal with a lot of bullshit, you think of funny ideas like, I should send them a postcard.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So, Cory, you also started the Curb Free Foundation, and can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I started that back in 2022, the Curb Free Foundation, and it was something that I had really wanted to do for years, just because every time I go on a trip, like if I am going to Barcelona, for example, like that trip, I'm not necessarily paying for it all the time. So I work with a lot of destinations to promote accessibility. And so in exchange for me writing about accessibility in that destination, like they will cover flights, hotels, like everything that goes into traveling, which is amazing. But for, the average person that doesn't have a blog or isn't an influencer, then how are they realistically able to afford these types of trips? And so that was a comment that I kept receiving over and over and over as I would go on these trips is, well, this looks amazing, but I realistically couldn't afford to go on this trip, even though it's like my dream trip. And so I thought, there needs to be a foundation or like a nonprofit where wheelchair users could like apply for funding and get their like dream trip completely paid for, and it would cost them anything to go. And so for years I had this idea, and then the pandemic happened, and I like a lot of free time to finally like dive into things and think about it. And so in 2020, in early 2022, we finally launched the Curb Free Foundation. And so on the curbfreefoundation.com, wheelchair users can go on there, fill out our application, and let us know what their dream trip is, what destination do they want to go to, and most importantly, why is that a dream trip for them? And then we go through the applications a couple times every year and choose the recipients. And so far, we have been able to send 6 wheelchair users on their dream trips. We are sending someone to Morocco next month, which I am so excited to see her journey. Morocco is a destination that she has wanted to go to since she was a little kid, and she's now in her 50s, I think, but she's finally getting to go. And so just being able to give out those trips to people that are so deserving is really like my favorite thing that we've ever done at Curb Free. So I love it every time I go through those applications.
I love that. Like, I also love that you're providing these trips to other disabled people. And it's really about like community and working together to like overcome these, financial barriers or whatever barriers may be. I just think that's really, very awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's really incredible just to be able to do that and to be able to like give back to the community that has like enabled me to, be able to travel for the past 10 years and supported me.
Yeah, I think it's really also just amazing to promote like travel so much for like these destinations then are having more disabled people visiting. And I think, there's this kind of self-fulfilling prophecy in accessibility where spaces that are inaccessible will say like, well, it's not worth it for us to make this place accessible because we don't have anyone who uses a wheelchair that comes here. And it's like, well, that is a self-fulfilling prophecy right there. And I think that, the more we're still living in a world that has the impacts of the like hideaway disability culture that used to exist. And so the more that we can be like loud and proud and about town, openly disabled, I think that that's incredible. And like, hopefully, there's places in Morocco now that are like seeing like, oh, hey, this accessible space is getting more people to come to it. Like, I think that that's really amazing. And I just love that you used your downtime from the pandemic to be like, okay, well, this has been great for me. How do I make it great for other people? Just really incredible work you're doing. That's so awesome. And like, what a joy that must be to get to. How do you tell someone that they've been selected, that they like got chosen and are going to get to go on their dream trip?
Yeah, so our committee, there are 5 of us. We go through every single application thoroughly. And then once we have our finalists, we just email them or call them and set up an interview. And so we'll do like a video interview with them just to learn more about like why they chose that destination for their dream trip, what it would mean to them to be able to win or to get it funded, and just really learn more about them as a person even. And then once we conduct the interviews with the finalists, we then choose the winner, the committee does, and we, send them a check and they're on their merry way. So we cover every expense that we can think of that they would need. If they need to take a caregiver, we will cover that as well. We cover flights, hotels, tour companies, special accessible transportation. So when we also give them like spending money so they can like buy souvenirs. So I don't want them to like, get to the destination and then they're like, well, I, can't afford like a $20 souvenir because I need to pay for like this other stuff. So we really want every single step to be fully taken care of when they do get to the destination.
Oh, that sounds so amazing. And you're like, not only are you giving this gift of like getting to go to a place, but because it's something that you have experienced firsthand, there's this level of like ease that you create for a situation that I'm sure people did not expect there to be any ease in.
Yeah.
So like the fact that to think through all of those things, like because you've traveled a lot, I think that's incredible and probably makes the experience just so wonderful. I mean,
yeah, hopefully. Yeah.
How often do you get to like not think and not plan? Like very few people, like that's such a luxury. So it's nice that you create that kind of luxury experience where you've thought through like, we want you to be able to get souvenirs and enjoy yourself, eat good food and see cool stuff. Like that's incredible. Yeah,
and with the lady that's going to Morocco next month, I went to Morocco back in 2018 on the first ever curb-free group trip, which we'll probably dive into in a bit. But when we did that group trip, I used a tour company in Morocco that like specialized in accessibility, and so I've been able to set the lady that's going to Morocco next month up with the exact same tour company. They're like really great guys that really have scouted Morocco for accessibility. So I know she's like going to be in good hands, and that definitely helps like ease her mind because I mean, if you are, someone like with or without a disability, I think, but even more so with a disability and you've not been out of the country or to a specific country that you're going to, there is so much like anxiety behind that of what's going to go right, what's going to go wrong, because usually something does go wrong on every trip. And just, the worry of that can be overwhelming at times. So, I mean, anything like we can do to ease that burden, I think is valuable.
Absolutely. Totally. That's awesome. So I also want to ask you about your children's book that I mentioned. How did you get into that?
Yeah, so that was another pandemic project. So I was like busy that year. I was at home, but I was busy. So my mom and I co-wrote Let's Explore with Cory, and it's all about a kid in a wheelchair that travels the world, and every destination that's featured in the book that Cory visits is one that I have actually been to. So they are destinations that are totally accessible for wheelchair users, and like you could definitely go to every destination in the book. So Cory goes to Australia, he goes to South Africa, Iceland, London. He's come to all over the world in this book. So it was a lot of fun to put together. And I'm really like my favorite thing about it, really, though. I mean, we did write it for children with disabilities to be able to, see a character and feel represented that he uses a powered wheelchair. But I also really love that even like non-disabled kids are reading this book and starting to like understand at a young age, that like, well, people that use wheelchairs, like they can actually travel and they can have these like really incredible lives and they can be like Cory and go see the world. And so it's been really fulfilling just to be able to see the impact that the book has had. And I haven't like announced this anywhere yet, but we have just started on the second book. So it's fully written and our illustrator is about a fourth of the way done. So we're hoping to release it toward the end of this year or in early 2025.
Amazing.
Oh my goodness, so exciting. And everything exclusive announcement. That's incredible. Yeah, that's amazing. I have 4 nieces and nephews under the age of 5.
Oh, wow.
And like since spending time with them, I have such like new love for children's book authors, because for real, these books, like they shape their entire perception of reality. And like I see in my nieces and nephews, like I see them, relating to the world through these characters that they've seen in books. And it's like, yeah, when when a child at such a young age just intrinsically knows because of a character that people in wheelchairs can travel, and there's no need to be surprised when you see that, then, you know, we hopefully it's like a really fun way to kind of stamp out the ableism we started with at the beginning of the call. Because I think that, you know, the people who are shocked to see wheelchair users traveling and don't speak directly to people who have caregivers, like those are the type of people that they didn't grow up with disability representation. They have these outdated stereotypes, and they think that their surprise is normal. And I think that, you know, this next generation of kids that have like book characters, movie characters, TV show characters that have disabilities and use wheelchairs and are still amazing and doing cool things. I just think that's incredible for both disabled kids to get to see themselves and non-disabled kids to just understand that disability is a part of life, and it's nothing shocking or surprising, actually, because it's a recurring thing on this show. We say go moms like once an episode because moms are incredible and they always come up on the show. So I love that you wrote this with your mom. What was your mom's like role in your life in creating your love of travel and helping you travel from a young age?
Yeah, so my mom and dad got divorced when I was like 4 years old. And so she raised me as a single parent for my entire life, pretty much. So I mean, definitely I would owe her, go moms. I remember like the first trip that I vividly remember, we went to Disney World in Florida, which I'm still like a Disney addict. I go a couple times a year usually, but we went to Disney, and that was like such like a great trip for me, just as my first trip ever. And then as I started getting older, though, we did start traveling to like other places, and we would go to DC or New York City. And then when I was 15, we went to the Bahamas for the first time, and that was kind of the first time that I got to see like a different culture and like try different foods and just see something different than the US. And so when I went to the Bahamas, I was like, the travel bug fully bit me and that trip and made me want to explore further. And so my mom has like always loved traveling, but when I was younger, we didn't really travel as in depth as I do now and as internationally as we do now. But now, as of today, my mom and I have done all 7 continents together. And so it's been an incredible journey like with her by my side for sure.
That is incredible. That's so amazing. All 7 continents. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Wow, I love that. And yeah, go moms. That's awesome. And just a great a reminder, I think, for listeners, like if you are the parent of a child who has any type of disability, like don't underestimate what your life can be together. And like I think that you know, your mom had the travel bug and gave it to you, and I think that's just really incredible. So go moms. That's, we always say when we get merch someday, that's going to be on one of our t-shirts. Go moms. Because
I would buy it.
Yeah, a supportive mom makes all the difference.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
absolutely.
cool. We'll mark you down for an order. We'll do a trade, and we'll get your new book, and you can get our merch someday.
Deal. Let's do it.
So I promise that we will talk about good travel experiences, but before, want to kind of address the elephant in the room. We have a problem with our airline industry and inaccessible travel. There's like a stat that says there's something like 31 wheelchairs a day get broken, which is just an unacceptable statistic. What has your experience been with that? And have you ever had any equipment damaged while traveling?
Oh yeah, many, many times. I would say probably like 50% of the flights that I take, my wheelchair is damaged in some way. So luckily, it's usually like a pretty minor damage, and we can like fix it while we're still in the airport. But sometimes like it has been damaged so badly on multiple occasions that I couldn't even drive my wheelchair out of the airport and had to be manually like pushed out of the airport because it was so damaged. We flew last year. We were flying to Barcelona, Spain. And when we got to Barcelona, the front wheel on my wheelchair was like broken half. The thing that like holds the wheel on, like, I don't know what it's called, like, I don't know. But anyway, the wheel was like literally hanging on by a thread and broken in half. And so we like duct taped it together long enough for me to get to the hotel and then to a wheelchair repair shop. And we had to get it repaired while we were in Barcelona. So, I mean, it's like constantly something that I worry about every single time that I fly. I mean, if anyone's listening, like, and that does happen to you, I would really urge you to file a report with the Department of Transportation. So if you are not filing a report with the DOT, then the airlines will not be held accountable and your numbers will not get counted toward those statistics of like 31 chairs a day damaged. And so the only way to really hold the airlines accountable and make them want to improve the situation and make a change is to really like get those DOT reports in. So every single time it's damaged, definitely file it.
Wow, yeah, I didn't realize that, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who don't realize, like, not just file a complaint with like the airline, but with the Department of Transportation. So that those statistics are really important, because when it comes to like regulating the airline industry and creating more accessibility, that's going to be done through policy. So with those statistics that you can be a part, unfortunately be a part of through the Department of Transportation, those are the stats that get used then in hearings and in Congress to talk through these kind of things. So it is really important to report that, which stinks because it's just another like burden to be added. Like, oh yeah, your wheelchair is going to be broken and you need to go to this government site and do this. Yeah, it's just frankly unacceptable that this is such a problem still, especially when, you know, we've got these like planes that are being created with these first class like cubicles basically where people can, you know, lay down and there's so much space and there's 3 TVs and there's enough, like, we know that we have the room to do things like that. So why aren't we creating airplanes where people can stay in their chairs for the duration of the flight? It feels like the answer is right there, and I do hope that in the next few years we see major changes, because yeah, those statistics are unacceptable. If an airline was breaking 31 people's legs a day, they would be shut down immediately.
Oh, yeah.
And that is effectively what's happening.
Yeah, and I do feel like
I
the
know.
situation is definitely improving. I mean, over the past like 5 years even, I mean, air travel for wheelchair users has never been talked about more than it is currently. And so I feel like, you know, at least airlines are starting to kind of listen to us, and the issue is being widely talked about, and like media outlets have covered it. And then I know like the Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg, he recently announced a new proposal for better accessible air travel and better training for, you know, the crew that loads the wheelchair and helps wheelchair users on board the plane. And so like it is being talked about, and there's a really good organization called All Wheels Up, and they are really the only organization in the world that is fighting to get a wheelchair spot on planes. They are conducting the crash testing and trying to raise money to like be able to conduct these tests so that one day we can stay in our wheelchairs on planes. And so All Wheels Up is like, I mean, one of my favorite organizations in the world. And I think, you know, with them, like we will see a change within the next decade, hopefully sooner. But I mean, I feel like we're at least 5 to 10 years away from that actually happening.
Yeah, absolutely. All Wheels Up is amazing. Easter Seals has worked with them a little bit, and I know we will continue to in the future, because it's the work they're doing is so incredible and like so specific about this issue. Well, I don't want to talk about all negative experiences. What has your best travel experience been in terms of accessibility?
I mean, I'm thinking about like a trip that I did last year. I went to Switzerland, and it was like
cool.
Probably the most accessible trip I've taken in a very, very, very long time. So I worked with a company there called Claire and George. And Claire and George is a company that specializes in accessible tourism within Switzerland. So they had the accessible van that we were able to use. They had us a guide for the entire trip. And every mode of transportation, whether we were using like the city buses or the trains or taxis, like every mode of transportation was completely accessible. So Switzerland like is far ahead of the game compared to most other destinations. And I was even able to go adaptive paragliding over the Swiss Alps, which is something that I had like never even imagined that I would be able to do in Switzerland. And then to be able to like have that experience of paragliding like over the literal Swiss Alps, like was the most mind-blowing thing in the world to me. So they had like an adapted seat that I was able to sit in. So it was basically just like a chair that I was like sitting in, and then they strapped me in it to hold me in it really well, put a helmet on me, and then we jumped off the mountain, and it was like the most incredible thing I've ever done.
Wow, that's incredible.
I should never. I'm just so
You
scared.
can do it.
But let's ultimately move it. I don't know. I'm not afraid of heights, but I'm afraid of jumping off a mountain.
Yeah.
In the time you
I mean, I was a little afraid too. Like, I was definitely nervous about it. Yeah. And even like that morning, I was like trying to back out of it. I was like, I mean, couldn't we just maybe like go eat fondue today again, or you know, like do something different? But then I was like, I might as well just like feel the fear and go for it. Like that's what I try to always say, like feel the fear and go for it. And I try to live by that. And so I just decided to do it, and it went really well, luckily. So yeah, I survived, and now I'm here to be on the podcast.
Feel the fear and go for it. I'm gonna write that down. I like that a lot. That's a good one.
Yeah.
It's a great phrase. And I actually had a similar experience. I went to Switzerland a few years ago with my, like, I think he was 89 at the time, my 89-year-old grandfather. So he uses some mobility aids. And very similarly, it was like, we kind of thought that he really wanted to go to Switzerland. And we were like, this is a huge trip for an almost 90-year-old man. And we were able to find like just very accessible things. And the transit system was very accessible and just overall. So kudos to Switzerland.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like, and a lot of Europe, like I feel like it's very hit or miss, and especially when you get to like, you know, Central Europe or like Western Europe with, you know, the old like cobblestone and the architecture that isn't always accessible. So to be able to like go to Europe, to somewhere like Switzerland, and have like such a positive experience is just like amazing. So I cannot wait to go back one day. But there are so many like amazing experiences that I've had. Like it's really hard to like choose Switzerland, but that's just like the one that happened pretty recently. So it's like at the top of mind, and I recently wrote an article about it. So it's very top of mind for me. But yeah, incredible. I would urge anyone to go if you haven't been already.
So I know that like traveling as a disabled person is not the easiest, but you've done it so many times, and I'm sure you have great advice for how to prepare for a trip. So what should someone with a disability, how should they start? What do you pack? What do you like get all your ducks in a row? How's that process?
Yeah, so I mean, I usually start planning for a trip anywhere between like 6 to 12 months in advance, some longer, actually, just to be able to really give myself enough time to fully prepare for the trip and plan out like accessibility, whether that's like planning accessible transportation or finding a really great accessible hotel or whatever, you know, all the things that go into traveling. Like I feel like it does take more time as a wheelchair user. So that's why I love to have a pretty good lead time with 6 to 12 months on average, especially for international trips. I mean, maybe even more than that if you can. And that's not to say that like spontaneity like can't exist as a wheelchair user. Like you can totally like be spontaneous at times and just like go on a trip and have a great time. But I feel like when I do plan further in advance and I've really like planned out everything, then once I actually get to the destination, I can actually enjoy it more instead of worrying about like accessibility constantly and how am I going to be able to do this and that. And so I can just like enjoy it because I've already done the research. And so that would be like, I guess, my number one tip about traveling. And then like you asked about like, what do I pack? I pack a lot, so I'm not a good packer. But I always like take duct tape, double-sided Velcro straps. I take duct tape like in case the wheelchair gets damaged in some way. We can usually use like duct tape or some little tools to like fix it a little bit. But then the double-sided Velcro, a lot of the aisle chairs, which is like the really narrow chair that you get on the plane with, especially internationally, they don't have seat belts on them. And so I take double-sided Velcro and just wrap it around like myself and the aisle chair. And that way, it acts as like a seat belt for me. And so that has been like a real game changer since I started taking that with me. And then I also use the Able Sling, which is like a transfer sling that I just sit on. And then it has 4 handles on it. So people are able to get like the handles and then pick me up out of my wheelchair by the handles and put me in the aisle chair and then into the plane seat. And that has like simplified the transferring process 100% for me. Like it's literally changed my life since I got that sling. And so it's really like a total game changer and just makes it so much easier than them trying to like grab up under my arms and like grab up under my knees and transfer me. Instead, we can just simply use the sling, and it's a lot safer for me and for them as well for transferring me.
That's great advice. I've seen you use it on your videos, and I think that's really, as I said, great advice. Did you find that, is it easy to get online? How did you find that?
Yeah, so it is available online. It's out of a company in the UK. But if you just search like Able Sling, it'll come right up. There are also some other companies that make slings that are very similar in the US, and they are a little bit cheaper because they are made in the US. So if you live in the US, they might be a good option. There is one called ADAPS, and they're amazing. And then there's also another one called The Perfect Lift, and it's made by a mom. Her son has Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and she's incredible. And so, yeah, definitely check them out. But also Able Sling is a great option.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. Thanks.
Lily, did you want to move on to the Easter seals?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool.
So this is an Easter Seals podcast, obviously, and Easter Seals is working to bring equity and access in community, health, education, employment, and transportation. So we just like to use the last little bit of our interview to kind of talk about these. We've obviously talked about transportation quite a bit and your experiences. And we touched on employment a little bit and discrimination you faced. So let's go ahead and start with community. I'd love to talk about the group trips that you had mentioned and the group trips that you've gone on, and just kind of like what it is meant to get to experience travel in a community of people who understand the similar barriers you might face, or just how that has been creating these amazing communities, because that's really what you're doing there, is creating community.
Yeah. I mean, every year since 2018, we, with the exception of 2020, we have done a group-free group trip. And so we've been able to visit some pretty remarkable places. We've gone to Morocco, Iceland, Costa Rica, Spain, Patagonia, and South America. And then next month, we're doing a group-free group trip in Greece. And later this year, we'll be doing a group-free group trip in Mexico. So we've had some really awesome experiences. And every year, that is like my favorite trip of the year, just because it's really the only chance that I have to travel with other people with disabilities that like get what it's like to travel with a disability. And so on those trips, we share like so many stories and tips and like try to help each other out. And we form like really lifelong friendships. Like, I mean, I'm friends with like everyone that's gone on a group-free trip. I mean, has been just amazing. And we still talk today. I mean, I was talking to 3 of them yesterday, actually, like messaging, and they're going on future group-free trips. And so it's really a great community, and like my favorite trip every year. So I cannot wait to always like go on another one. So I'm really excited for next month to be able to go to Greece and experience it with some of my followers and audience.
That's amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
I would love to do in Greece one day, maybe.
Yeah.
If it, let me bring my chair onto the plane.
Yeah.
I'm going to be traveling. You'll never see me again.
Oh, yeah. I
I'll
say
go
the
to
same
Japan.
thing. Well, once I can roll in the plane, like I will never be home again.
Yeah. Totally.
See, that's again the money talks. Like, airlines, come on, like, we're gonna be traveling. The more accessible you make this.
Oh yeah.
That's amazing though, what you're doing, that community, just so incredible. It makes me think like of I don't know if you saw the documentary about that was on Netflix a few years ago, Crip Camp, about that camp
I love
that Judy Heumann went to. Yeah, and just like that documentary made me think about like the summer camps that Easter Seals has, and like these, it's just so nice when you have these memories you can make with people who you don't have to like explain so much backstory to. Like, it's just, how often do you get to be in a group where like the majority of people understand disability rather than like just a handful? I think that that's honestly was part of why Aaron and I wanted to make this podcast, was to have a space where it was like, how often do you get to be, in a room, it's virtual, but in a room with 3 people and all 3 people are disabled? Like, that's such a rare thing. And it's such, just what you said, you make amazing memories and look forward to it every year. That makes total sense. I think that you're a real community builder there. And I think community builders are really, really important.
Yeah, thank you. And I mean, I think another thing that I really, really love about the group trips is like that we do go to international destinations every year. And so we really try to choose places that maybe wouldn't think of as necessarily being like wheelchair accessible or wheelchair friendly. And so when we are like rolling through the alleyways of Marrakesh, or we're in the mountains of Patagonia, like in South America, like, and when, people that are local see us traveling within their destination, that's often like the first time that they've seen someone in a powered wheelchair, like rolling through the alleyways of Marrakesh. And then when they see 4 of us all at one time, they're like, wow, like, I feel like we're kind of changing perceptions, like when we do go on these trips. And so I think that's like another one of my favorite things about these trips, is that we are able to change perceptions within that local destination, hopefully.
I think it's really important to like, I don't want to say educate people, but show them that we lead full lives. And I don't think a lot of people understand that and what that means. But like, just being out there, in my opinion, is like a form of activism, just existing in public, because a lot of people assume that we just don't leave the house ever. We don't have jobs. We don't have relationships. So I think it's just really important for us to get out there, like you said. Just put ourselves out there, enjoy life, and see what happens.
I completely agree. Yeah.
Yeah, and the joy aspect there. There's like, the people say like joy can be resistance. Like, in that, like, there's too many people who still believe the like tragic disabled story of like that every disabled person lives like this tragic life and there's no joy. And I would love to see someone who like, has those kind of like thoughts and stereotypes embedded within them, get to see a group of like, like you said, 4 wheelchair users rolling down the streets of Marrakesh, giggling together, like laughing and like having just like joy.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I also want to point out like that even if you don't leave the house, you can still find joy.
Absolutely.
And lead a full life. Yeah. I just want to say that, because I think like there's a lot of barriers in place for people in society and accessibility, your own healthcare needs, that you can't travel or go out. But that to me is different than like people assuming that we all, don't lead full lives.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Absolutely.
And I think for me, yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good point that you brought up, Aaron, that, I mean, even if someone, can't necessarily travel, like, there's so many resources available online now where you can like virtually travel. Like, you can virtually do tours of cities now. I'm like, I mean, it's really incredible at what all the internet can provide. So, I mean, even, if you aren't able to travel in person, you can still find a lot of like travel joy at home, I believe.
Totally. I love watching people on YouTube like travel, because right now I can't travel, but it's just nice to see like the world, even if it's on a computer screen. It's fun. I like it.
Yeah, and there's never been like more like accessible travel influencers than there are today, or like travel shows. I mean, the information is very, very widely available now, which I'm super thankful for, because like for me, it really allows me to like be able to research more and figure out, what's accessible like from like firsthand from other wheelchair users, instead of just relying on information on Google, when I'm traveling. So I love to get those like firsthand perspectives from like YouTube videos or an Instagram or Facebook or wherever it may be.
Yeah, I just think it's like, whether it's that you assume that people who need to stay home have sad lives, or people can't leave the home, like either way the assumptions are bad.
Yeah.
And just like letting go of assumption is the most important part.
Yeah.
I think.
Definitely.
And just like the internet has done just wonders for being able to community build online. One thing I wanted to bring up was, which Aaron, you kind of touched on, healthcare is a barrier for a lot of people with traveling. How do you manage your healthcare while traveling?
So I do always have travel insurance. I have never left home without it for the past like 5 years, probably. So it is really hard to find a travel insurance though that will cover pre-existing medical conditions. And so the company that I use is Allianz Travel Insurance, and they do cover pre-existing medical conditions, and it has saved me thousands of dollars numerous times. I was in New Mexico a few years ago. I'm on a trip, and I was in my shower wheelchair about to get in the shower, and one of the wheels on the chair locked up, and it threw me into the floor, and I actually fractured my skull and had a brain bleed from that. And so I was hospitalized, but the travel insurance covered 100% of those costs. And so I am like, I will not even leave my front door if I don't have travel insurance now. So, and I can't imagine like what I would have done without that. And so, if you're traveling, I mean, I think, that is a necessity, especially if you have a disability, is to have travel insurance. But yeah, definitely get it.
That is terrifying.
Yeah, terrifying.
That's so scary, but also so amazing that they covered that 100%. I think that I would not expect travel insurance to like go that far. So that listeners take that advice for real.
Yeah, I mean,
that is really important.
Yeah, I get an annual plan like every year, so I'm covered for the entire year. And for the annual plan, it's like $400, or maybe like $500, but it covers you for the whole year, and so paying that $400 compared to, I think my bill from when I fractured my skull was over like $50,000, and so there's no way like I could have done that. So travel insurance, like I am a huge advocate for it ever since then.
That's great advice. But yeah, I honestly really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your story and what you do with Curb Free. I think you're incredible. I've been following you online for quite a long time, so to be able to chat with you is one of my favorite things
thank
ever.
You so much.
So thank you for being on.
Yeah, that really means a lot.
And,
I appreciate it.
Of course. And how can people find you online?
Yeah, so my blog is at curbfreewithcorylee.com. And then I'm also on Instagram. I post pretty much every single day. I'm at curbfreecorylee. And then I'm also on Facebook, Curb Free with Cory Lee, TikTok, all the platforms. But yeah, just search Curb Free with Cory Lee and I should come right up. And if anyone is listening and like has any questions for me about accessible travel, feel free to DM me or email me through my contact page on my website. And I'm always happy to chat further and hopefully help you get out there and see the world.
Oh, thank you so much for going on this episode today. Yeah, like Erin said, we think the work you do is super awesome, and you're a phenomenal writer. I love reading the things that you've written. Listeners, we will link all of those accounts that were just listed off. They'll be linked in the YouTube video, and I'm sure we'll post on Instagram. We'll tag Cory so you can find him on there. Even if you aren't looking to plan a trip, he's just a great follow to see amazing content. So thank you so much for coming on today. This is a great conversation, and I think it will change some people's perception of what they think about what we can do and where we can go. So really appreciate it. Really happy to have you on. And listeners, as always, thank you for tuning in. We love you, and we will see you next time on another episode of Everything You Know About Disability is Wrong.
If you liked what you heard, go ahead and subscribe and leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts.
Thank you to our listeners, and as always, thank you to Easter Seals for giving us the space and resources to share such authentic conversations from within the disability community to our listeners.
And we'll see you next time for another episode of Everything You Know About Disability is Wrong.
Everything you know about disability is wrong.
This is a podcast brought to you by Easter Seals.
You know, we actually work for Easter Seals, but maybe our listeners don't know what we do.
That's true. Easter Seals is leading the way to full access, equity, and inclusion for disabled people and their families.
And did you know we've been doing this for more than a century?
This includes helping disabled people find meaningful employment and addressing healthcare needs for all ages.
We're proud to serve communities across the country and ready for the next 100 years. For more, check out easterseals.com.